And in the Limud HaRambam of today, for those that learn 3 prokim a day, we are finishing the halachas of Beis HaBchira and beginning the halachas of Klei HaMikdash. And the Rambam in the halachas of Beis HaBchira tells us that in the Beis HaMikdash there was a concept of Shmira, guarding the Beis HaMikdash. And the Rambam quotes from Gemara that guards were placed in 24 places. In 3 places the guards were Koyanim, and in the remainder 21 the guards were Leviim. And as the Rambam goes on to explain that placing guards was not something that these guards were there because of a fear or to watch for any breakage or so, but it's simply an expression of respect. And as the Rambam continues, one cannot compare a palace that has guards in front of it to a palace that does not have any guards in front of it. And therefore it's something which is done purely, out of respect for this holy site, for the Mokem HaMikdash, that guards were placed in all of these places. And as the Rambam continues, the placing of these guards is a mitzvah saseh, and neglecting it, one is over an eloi saseh. So we have how this is tied in, sai with a mitzvah saseh, and sai with a mitzvah eloi saseh. And the Rebbe continued, explained this halacha. He said what requires an explanation really is, how come that after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, still we do not find that the inyan of guards, of shemrim, should be continued? We all know that the Kedusha, the sanctity, still remains at the same place, though the Beis HaMikdash is not there. And therefore it would have been, obviously, the most proper type of an approach that even the Beis HaMikdash is not there, and the places where it is permitted to stand, for Shemrim to be there. Now when we will get back the 3rd Beis HaMikdash, for which we are hoping that the Rebbe will give us back the Beis HaMikdash, and that could come even today, even on Shabbos, even before Mincha, right now during the Farbrengen. So we know that as soon as we will have the Beis HaMikdash, with this Beis HaMikdash it will not take a long time to build, because this is Mikdash Adnai Koinenu Yedecha. The Beis HaMikdash is already erected and built, and all that has to happen is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to let it down to us. So as soon as we will get the Beis HaMikdash, we will right away be obligated in this mitzvah of placing Shemrim at the Beis HaMikdash. Now there are differences in opinions in Rishonim, whether these Shemrim had to be there at all times, or only Balayla, or only at night. The Rambam is under the opinion that this was done only at nights. Other Rishonim claim that it isn't an inyan which was done only at night, it was done at all times, 24 hours a day. But getting back the way the situation is now, that we do not have the Beis HaMikdash yet, so the question arises, obviously there still should have been a shimur, a shmira, a guards placed at those spots where it is permitted for people, for Yidden to stand. So the simple answer which comes to our mind is that being that halacha eis of Soina Liyankiv, and right after the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash, destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash, it was a danger for Yidden to stand there, and they would see Yidden at certain spots, certain places. These Yidden would endanger themselves. And once it was already begun that Shemrim were not there, so even in later years, when it would have been easier for Yidden to have access to these places, nonetheless, they did not place Shemrim again. Especially when we look at the attitude and the closeness which each one of the Rabbeim, Rabbi Seinu Nisienu, expressed towards Eretz Yisrael, beginning right away from the Alter Rebbe. As we know, the Alter Rebbe's dedication towards Eretz Yisrael from the fact that he founded Kollel Chabad, and the Igros Kodesh which the Alter Rebbe wrote regarding the importance of giving tzedakah to support the poor in Eretz Yisrael, to the extent that the Alter Rebbe writes that one should lend money and give the money for Tzidkas Eretz Yisrael, and later he will pay it back as the money comes into him. So we see what kind of dedication the Rabbeim had, and nonetheless, we do not find that the Rabbeim should have expressed an interest in setting up an inyan of Shmira on the spot of the Beis HaMikdash. And as mentioned, perhaps the reason could be because it's simply an inyan, a matter of Pikuach Nefesh. Says the Rebbe to say that the only reason is Pikuach Nefesh, and it is for this reason that the Rabbeim did not place anybody, or Klal Yidden did not place, Gedolei Yisrael did not place anybody at the spot of the Beis HaMikdash. We know of the dedication to the Rabbeim towards Eretz Yisrael, that even if something required Mesiras Nefesh, it was also done. So if the inyan is needed, so let's assume it does require Mesiras Nefesh, still it would happen. And nonetheless we see that there was no inyan of Shmira at the site of the Beis HaMikdash throughout all these years. This inyan actually, says the Rebbe, is discussed in the Sefer, which was written by one of the Tzemach Tzedek Chassidim. And there the inyan is already discussed. And the inyan of discussing it now, discussing this inyan is also just for discussion purposes. But it's an inyan which requires an explanation, requires interpretation. How come Taka that throughout all these years the site of the Beis HaMikdash is holy, the Kedusha remained at this spot, and nonetheless we see that there was no inyan of Shmira ever instituted on the spot of the Beis HaMikdash. Just like we're talking about a Beis HaMikdash in Gashmias, there is the same thing, there's the Ruchniistic Beis HaMikdash within each and every Yid as well. And that is the V'osu Mikdash V'shachanti B'soicham, B'soich kol echad ve'echad, that within each and every Yid there is the Beis HaMikdash. And just like the Gashmi is the Beis HaMikdash requires Shmira, the same way the Ruchniistic Beis HaMikdash also requires a guard, that it should be guarded, that it should be functioning properly. And this is something which relates to everybody. Men, women, and children, because everybody has this Ruchniistic Beis HaMikdash within them. And everybody realizes and everybody understands that this Shmirah, it's not just that you place somebody that something shouldn't be stolen or somebody shouldn't get hurt, because we can understand it also from the fact who were the Shemrim. The Shemrim were not just plain people who were placed to stand there as Shemrim. If the Shmirah should be only to make sure that nothing is stolen or nothing is damaged, then anybody you will place there, so that would be sufficient. So we see, no, who were the Shemrim? The Shemrim had to be exact. Certain places were Leviim, certain places were Koyanim. So from this in itself, we see right away that this is a Shmira which brings out their respect. The same thing when we're talking about the Ruchniistic Beis HaMikdash within each and every one of us, there's also the Shmira which we have to give, which is an expression of respect for the Beis HaMikdash which each and every one of us possesses, because each and every one of us is capable for making our own environment, our own homes, and our own society, to turn it into a Beis HaMikdash that it should be worthy, that the Shekhinah should dwell there. And it also requires the inyan of Shomrim, guarding it, which is an expression of respect. And here the Rebbe mentioned that everybody understands that there are things which are of more importance, and there are things which have less importance, less chashiv. Even in Torah, where we say that each and every letter of Torah comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and each and every word comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nonetheless, we see that human nature is that when we come to the Aseres HaDibros, we treat it one way. When we come to Shema Yisrael, we also treat it in a very special way. And when we come across a pasuk, Achois Loiton Timna, or such other type of psukim, then we do not make such a special issue of it. What does this show? That everyone understands that there are nyanim of less more important, and there are nyanim matters that are of less significance. However, when we're talking about the Beis HaMikdash, which is within each and every one of us, Nida Rebbe was talking about children who own their svarim. Also to make sure that when a child writes his name on a sefer, a child is trained in such a way that first the child writes, Lashem ha'otzim loya. First the child knows that everything comes from the Rabbeinu Shlomo. And afterwards, also from the Rebishter, it was also given to him or to her that they put down their own private name on the sefer. This whole inyan also has a shayches to the Indian of Sfiras Ha'omer, which we are in the middle of right now. Sfiras Ha'omer now is Midarabbanan. Sfiras Ha'omer, Mashiach will come, will be Min HaTorah. And interesting, we see that in Sfiras Ha'omer, we emphasize the shayches between Sfiras Ha'omer and Binyan Beis HaMikdash. Because right after we count the Ha'omer, what do we say? A special Arachman, Yachzal, Avidas Beis HaMikdash, Lam Kaima, B'mehera V'yameinu HaMeisel. So we are right away, each and every day that we are counting Sfirah, we are mentioning also the Inyan of Beis HaMikdash. Though that a Yid, before we begin davening every morning, we say the Yerotzim Ofanecha, this comes as an introduction. Before Haidu, this we say right away. Nonetheless, in Sfiras Ha'omer, we find a special inyan as Sfiras Ha'omer as a special shaychus to Beis HaMikdash. So the question would arise, when Mashiach will come, and we're hoping for Mashiach's coming right away, which means that Mashiach will come in the middle of Sfiras Ha'omer, then the latter part of Sfiras Ha'omer will be an obligation Min HaTorah. On the other hand, Sfiras Ha'omer is a package. Sheva Shabbos Tmimos Tehiyena. You have to have a whole package of 7 weeks. So what's going to be? The first part of Sfira, we counted Midarabbanan. The latter part of Sfira will be an obligation Min HaTorah. It'll be lacking in the Tmimos, in the whole and complete of the 7 weeks, that they will not all be on the same level. Furthermore, Min HaTorah, Sfiras Ha'omer comes after the Korban Omer was brought. And the Korban Omer has to be brought first, and that is when we begin counting Sfiras Ha'omer. Now when Mashiach will come in the middle of Sfiras Ha'omer, what's going to be done with the Korban Omer? When will that be brought? Will it be brought altogether? When will it be brought? Same question also arises to the Shtei HaLechem. The Shtei HaLechem is a special korban which was brought on Shavuos, and the Shtei HaLechem also comes as a continuity to the korban Omer which was brought on Pesach. But being that during Pesach we were still in Golus, so the question arises: is the Shtei HaLechem contingent on the korban Omer, and korban Omer we did not bring during Pesach, or could it be brought even though there was no korban Omer brought on Pesach? Still, nonetheless, we can bring a Shtei HaLechem in Shavuos. Actually, the understanding of this question is because both of these karbanes, side the korban Omer and side the korban of the Shtei HaLechem, which were brought on Shavuos, both related to create a heta for the chodesh, for the new-grown wheat, to be able to be used side by people for private use as well as for karbanos use. So, being that the first korban, the korban Omer, which is supposed to be brought on the second day of Pesach, during that time we were still in Golus, so the question arises: does this relate to the Shtei HaLechem, which has to come in Shavuos, or doesn't it? Yeah. The Rebbe continued in the Farbrengen that another inyan, which is Negeya, which we are beginning today on this Shabbos, is the inyan of Pirkei Avos. As the Alter Rebbe writes in the Siddur, that it's a minig between the weeks of Pesach and Shavuos that we recite Pirkei Avos. Alter Rebbe also adds on, again, there are also those that have a custom to recite Pirkei Avos, Kol Shabsei Sakai, it's all the Shabbosim of the entire summer. And when we do that, we may have to come, may have to be that the last weeks before Rosh Hashanah, we may have to say on one Shabbos not only one Perek, but 2 Brok. But as the minig is, that everyone says, these weeks from Pesach till Shavuos. And it's also a minig that as an introduction to Pirkei Avos, we say a Mishnah from Masechta Sanhedrin, Kol Yisrael yesh lehem chelik le'olam haba. Every Yid has a share in Olam Haba. Shenema va'amich kulam tzadikim. Your nation are all tzadikim. Neitza matoi ma'aseh yodai lehispoyer. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, each and every Yid is the work of my hands. Ma'aseh yodai lehispoyer, for my pride. The Rebbe is proud with each and every Yid. Here the Rebbe elaborated on this very strongly. The Rebbe touched up what the Mishnah is telling us. Kol Yisrael. Kol means every Yid. Everyone, men, women, and children. And when we're talking about children, it shaykhs to be a child begashmius, and it shaykhs to be somebody who's considered a child beruchnius, meaning in age he's older than a child's age, but nonetheless his accomplishments are very little, and that is why we refer to him as a child. Famous expression from the Frierdiker Rebbe: age is not measured by a passport. Everybody has his birthday in a passport, but not always do we judge a person by his age, by his gashmiistic age. We look at what a person has accomplished. Famous Chassidish Taich, the Rebbe I think teaches it: V'Avram zokein bo bayomim, v'Hashem berachas Avram b'koil pasik. Zok, the Alter Rebbe, obviously there's a double expression. The pasuk says Avram zokein, Avram got old. What is the expression? Bo bayomim, he came with the days. So the Alter Rebbe teaches, not only was he old in Gashmias, but bo bayomim, he was able to account for all his days. Each and every day had its accomplishment. He had a record of accomplishments to be proud of. Mela, getting back to our union, we're talking about Kol Yisrael, regardless of whatever level a Yid is standing. And we say, each and every Yid, yesh lahem chelek lo'ilam haba. What's the taich chelek? Chelek means a piece. It doesn't mean just that they can have access to Olam Haba, or they have a shaykhis to Olam Haba. When we say one has a chelek of something, he has a gashmiistic part of something. Just like there's a pasuk, ki chelek Hashem amoy, that Bnei Yisrael are part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there it means literally in the sense that each and every Yid, as the Alter Rebbe touches up in the second part, Perik of Tanya, which was spoken about in recent Farbrengens, how each and every Yid is a chelek, a lekah, mimal, a chelek, a part of Getlachkeit. And the Alter Rebbe doesn't just satisfy himself with quoting the pasuk, but adds on the word mamish. And as it's known, all the interpretations of the word mamish, which mean to bring out that it is so in Gashmias, it is tangible that way, that each and every Yid is a part of the Rebishter. And the same when we are saying here, Kol Yisrael, yesh lahem chelek lo'olam haba, it emphasizes how each and every Yid has a chelek in olam haba. And when we say olam haba, it means the world of Tchiyas HaMesim. Regarding Gan Eden, which is a lower level than Tchiyas HaMesim. However, regarding Gan Eden, there, not everybody is can reach to that level. Why? Because Gan Eden is a reward for the maisim which one has done in this world. However, when we're talking about Kol Yisrael, Yesh Lam Chelek Lo'ilam Haba, which is the world of Tchiyas HaMeisim, this is something which each and every Yid, men, women, and children, every Yid has a Shaykhis to Olam Haba. And as the pasuk goes on, as the Mishnah goes on quoting the pasuk, each and every Yid is the craftsmanship, the work of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Rebishter says on every single Yid, Mainse Yodai Lehispoyer, that every Yid is at such a level that the Rebishter says it's a pride for him. It is his pride, each and every Yid. And from here we go on into Pirkei Avos. The Pirkei Avos we also bring out the Moshe Kibbel Torah Sinai. Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. And when we say Torah, it means Torah Bechlal, and particularly the Luchos. And the Luchos, that is where Torah was engraved on the Luchos. And it's explained in the Chassidus, what's the difference between writing and engraving. Engraving brings out that it is a total unity between what is engraved and on what it is engraved. The same thing is the Shaykhs to Yidden and Torah. And as the Mishnah goes on, with the instruction of the Hamidu Talmidim Harbe, to bring in many, many Talmidim. And this is what we have to reach out to each and every Yid. And the Rebbe said that those that are going to speak in the shuls, Lahakil Kihila, is to speak in shuls, Sichas, should relate this inyan, how dear every Yid is by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How the Rebbe is referring to every Yid, Maisei Yodai Lehispoyer, and that every Yid, Kol Yisrael, each and every Yid has his chelek. And the Rebbe kept on emphasizing what a chelek is. A chelek is simply has a share in all of Olam Haba. This is what each and every Yid has. And from here we see the greatness of every Yid. Early in the Farbrengen, when the Rebbe was talking about the inyan of placing Shmira in front of at the various places of the Beis HaMikdash, that we brought out that this inyan of Shmirah relates to Shabbos also. Because regarding Shabbos, we also find the expression Ushmartem es HaShabbos, also an inyan of Shmirah. And when the Rebbe spoke about the Beis HaMikdash in Ruchnias, he brought out that there is a Beis HaMikdash in time, and there's a Beis HaMikdash in place. There's a Zman and there is a Mokim. In time, it is Shabbos. What's the pshat? Just like the Beis HaMikdash is a spiritual elevation where the Shechina was dwelling and where godliness was felt. That's the same idea as Shabbos. And then we have it in place. In place, it means how each and every Yid, in Mokim, how each and every Yid is worthy of creating himself and his house and everything around him, that it should be an environment of such, worthy for the Shechina to dwell there, just like the Shechina dwelled in the Beis HaMikdash. But concluded, like we find in this week's Seder, Vahi Bayom Shemini. And as Chazal tell us all the great brachas that this day brought out. Moshe Rabbeinu told him, that may it be the will of Hashem that the Shechina should dwell b'maaseh yedeichem. That it was the same meaning how preparing a place that it should be worthy for the dwelling of the Shechina. Another meaning which is relevant, as we discuss, of tzarchei tzibah, public matters on Shabbos, and that is that being that we are before the summer weeks, and parents are already beginning to plan the summer for their children. So it's an appropriate time to remind everybody to make sure that children are sent to proper camps. And a camp, at times, may have even more advantage than a school. So when a child goes to a school, to a yeshiva, then after a couple of hours of being in school, the child comes home. And there could be different type of influences on the child, especially in this country where we are living amongst Goyim. And it could very well be that children, after coming home from school, have Goyish friends who they play with, and we could never know what type of influence this exerts on the child. However, when a child is in a camp, especially when we're talking about a sleepaway camp, then the child is in this atmosphere of Yerushalayim and the atmosphere of Torah 24 hours a day. But even when we're not talking about a sleepaway camp, even a day camp, a proper day camp is also the right child where a child should spend his summer months, because in the country which we are in, and same many other countries, the system is such that a school is only for most of the months of the year, but not for all the months of the year. And therefore it's extremely appropriate to make sure that everybody is in a proper environment for the summer. And this is something which leaves a very strong impact on the child. It's not something which relates only to his summer. When you give the child a proper education, this is something which will have an effect on his entire life. And we could never know what a summer in a child's life may be. A summer in a child's life may have an effect on his entire life, and this could be one way and this could be the other way. So when we see to it that a child is getting proper atmosphere and is in a camp which is Altaras HaKashrus, and especially when a camp which is Altaras HaKodesh, it's definitely something which is extremely meaningful to the child, and as mentioned, not only during the summer months, but it's something which can have an impact on him for his entire life. The Rebbe concluded the Farbrengen by calling those who have submitted mashke. They should take the mashke and should announce for whatever purpose it is, and others should learn from them to also do the same type of functions and same type of inyanim. May it be the will of Hashem, says the Rebbe, that before all these functions which they are taking the mashke for take place, Mashiach should come even before then. A gute Woche.